This consisted of leading art and gameplay design, as well as being responsible for bringing the individual parts of the project together into one product. Before talking about the work I did for this project, then the other members of the team will introduce themselves and talk to you about each of their work. Then I will pop back in at the end to discuss my parts of the project and wrap everything up.
My name is Jacob Malone, and I served as the lead programmer for this project. This included programming the player inventory, equipment and shop system, the stat system, save system, and managing movement between multiple levels. These systems all tie into the core gameplay loop. The player kills monsters and completes quests in various levels, earning gold and experience. The player can then return to the hub level to buy healing items or better armor in order to reduce incoming damage. When the player gains enough experience, they level up. Leveling up grants stat points which can be spent to increase various stats. Strength increases the damage dealt to enemies, toughness decreases the incoming damage, and intelligence increases the money gained while selling items. These systems utilize various data tables, components, save states, structures, and interfaces to work properly with one another. This layout of progression is designed to encourage the player to keep playing while keeping the workflow of the developer lighter to allow focus to be put on other parts of the project.
My name is Brandon Bradley, and for our project, I serve as lead quest designer as well as UI designer. The quest system is designed around 4 different objective types: location, interaction, collection, and kill. Location objectives require the player to go to a certain area or location. Interact objectives require the interaction with a specific actor. Collection objectives require the player to interact with collectible items that can be placed in the player inventory. And kill objectives require defeating a certain amount of enemies. The dialogue system creates a text box and displays it on the screen, reciting different information depending on the NPC interacted with. Both the quest and dialogue systems work in tandem to direct the player through gameplay, whether it be exploration or combat. These systems have an emphasis on accessibility, allowing a designer with no programming experience the ability to edit the information as they please. These systems were made using a series of widgets, components, structures, and enumerators to hold objective typings and objective data.
Hello, I am Daniel, and I served as lead enemy designer for this project. We used a model from Mixamo for the goblins, and edited them to better fit our other assets. I also modeled the gear for the melee goblin and attached it to its skeleton. There are 2 different types of goblins, a melee variant and an archer variant. Here is a brief rundown of how the behavior works for each. For the melee goblins, they are each set to follow a customizable patrol path. If the perception component of the melee goblin detects the player, they will leave their path and pursue the player. When a melee goblin gets within range of the player, they will attack with their sword. If the player manages to break line of sight with the goblin will enter a search state. When searching for the player, a goblin will move to the last point where it saw the player, and search random points in the vicinity. If the player is not found, the goblin will return to its original patrol route. The archer goblin's behavior is much more straightforward. Upon seeing the player at range, the AI will begin to fire upon the player at a set interval. If the player gets too close to an archer goblin, they will try to move away to a safe distance to keep firing. To keep this from being frustrating to the player, the action is on a cooldown, giving the player a chance to close the distance. These behaviors are done using a combination of behavior trees, blueprints, and animation blueprints.
Before starting to put everything together, I first was responsible for handling the creation of the player character. This included programming all of the functions for movement and combat, like basic movement, jumping, crouching, attacking, etc., using state machines, blend spaces, and animation montages. My major contribution to the programming was the combat system. My goal was to create a free-flow combat system in the vein of the Rocksteady Batman games. Each time the player attacks, the character checks a range in front of it for enemies, determines the closest enemy, and moves to them to attack. If the player attacks again within a certain window, they will continue the combo. Each consecutive hit in a combo does increase damage. By using animation notifies to dictate when the player can and can't move during an attack animation, I was able to achieve the effect of bouncing between enemies that I was aiming for. Attacks also have accompanying visual effects, as well as hit effects. I was also responsible for designing and populating the 2 levels featured in this demo. Using assets from the Unreal Marketplace, I designed and populated the village and forest. I also handled lighting and sound for these levels. Both levels are designed in such a way as to allow for a variety of quests and objectives to be implemented outside of the basic examples in this demo. All things considered, I am very pleased with how everything came together. All 4 of us put a huge amount of effort into this work, and though still clearly a demo, I think it does an effective job of conveying the core functions of a greater game concept. This has provided a very solid base to expand on in the future, and I look forward to building on it further. Thank you for watching.